we also got a question from a guy named Damon, and he wanted me to follow up on something. Damon very kindly let me know that one of my heroes, Father Michael Himes, had passed away not long ago. I guess it was just a few weeks ago as I'm speaking. And because of the way things are, I didn't know about it, but I've heard him speak multiple times in person. He was a speaker who would just offhand quote A Midsummer's Night Dream, and then a few minutes later quote something from Rabelais, and then a few seconds later quote something from here, something. The man had a brilliant mind, a brilliant intellect, and his clarity in his teaching meant a lot to me. Well, in Damon's, and I'm not sure this is actually a podcast question, but I want to share the information with you. I do discuss this in this material in the Easy Strength Omni book that'll be coming out this fall. But Father Himes had a wonderful lecture on joy and happiness. And of course, joy, gaudium, is that's the Latin, means many things to many of us. But what happens sometimes is people will ask a question, and I'm at that age where people ask me questions about careers because I've had a good one, and now I'm kind of walking away a little bit into a different direction. And what Michael Himes did one time is he came up with 3 questions to ask if you are or are not kind of worthy of this career option. And the first question is beautiful. It's this: do you love it? And it's funny because when I was listening to his talk, I found 2 different versions of the talk on YouTube. I actually, in the 2 talks, my brain went one time into my more public career as a whatever we call ourselves now, educator, teacher, professor, instructor, whatever I was for all those years. I started getting paid as a teacher in 1979, and I still do it now, and I do. I feel like teaching is easy for me, and I think one of the reasons teaching is easy for me is because I love it. Just before I came on to this podcast, I was out helping my discus thrower Emily, and she was having a great day. She got a personal record today in the snatch, good for her. And then we went out and threw afterwards, and she threw a personal record in the discus, which is like one of those days you just don't get many of those, so enjoy it. But just watching her throw and the beauty of the movement, how to watch her improve so much, I love it. I mean, I love it. The same way I blindly love my grandchildren and my daughters, where you just look at them, and I love my grandchildren. And yet when I watch the discus and I'm helping someone, I love it. So the second time I listened to it, oddly, my brain bumped over into being a strength coach. And I look here behind me, and then there's all those shelves up there, strength and health magazines, and there's all the Dragon Door books here. And then here's this Derek Sivers books, some nutrition books, some strength books, all the Clarence Bass books, my books. Folks, I love strength and conditioning. I fell in love with it the first time I saw that Ted Williams Sears barbell in 1965. When I bought my first Strength and Health magazine for 75 cents. I loved it. I love everything about it. I can read those 1968 magazines right now and be like, well, that's interesting. I'll make notes on an article I've read 10,000 times because, folks, I love it. And if you love something, I feel like I'm about to go into a Sting song. But if you love somebody, if you love something, you love it. And I can't explain it any better than that. If I'm tired on a plane and I have a book about strength and conditioning, I'll stay up to read it. I love it. The second question he asks is the tough. The first one's easy, I think. The second one's a little bit more difficult, and I want to share this one. Are you good at it? And how do you find out if you're good at it? Well, I tell people sometimes, well, videotape yourself doing it. And if you look like you're good at it, you're good at it. Some people hate the videotape. But are you good at it? Well, how do I know I'm good? Well, I've got these little folders throughout my office here, and I've got some there in my little archive office. And there are letters, and there's notes, and there's pieces of paper, but one of the files is called "Nice Things People Said About You," and I got this from a workshop I went to years ago, and the person in the workshop said, always keep if someone says something nice to you, always keep a copy of it, because people aren't always going to say nice things about you. My old boss, Archbishop Niederauer, used to call me a diva because I'd only focus on the most negative reviews of things. And I am a diva. There's no question about it. I'm a diva because I absolutely love what I do. And I think I'm good at it. So when someone says I'm not, I kind of breaks my little Danny John's heart. Am I good at it? Am I good at it? One of the things I strive to do in my career is what Earl Nightingale calls the top 5%. The top, lead the field is all about being the top of the pyramid in everything. And he says it's the top 5%. You see this number show up all the time. Only 1 in 20 Americans retire with enough money and resources to not need any help. I'm one of those 1 in 20. As a writer, my goal was to get in the top 5% of authors of all time. And then I found the number, and it's 10,000 copies. And I'm easily in that number across probably the bulk of the books I've ever written. So I'm a top 5% author. Actually, I'm a top 3 because I sold over 20,000 copies, which is just funny. People, most books don't sell as well as, those bestsellers you're thinking of. Publishing is very much a power law. Just like Hollywood, very, very few movies, very, very few books make as much money as all the other books and movies combined. And it's bizarre to say that out loud, but it's true. So one of the things I try to do is try to be in the top 5% of everything I do. As a discus thrower, there's no question I was. In fact, I was in the top 5% as late as age 47, where I had the best year of my career, which is cool. As an Olympic lifter, I was ranked as high as number 3 here in the United States, which would put me maybe not, well, I don't know, but 5% in the world, I don't know, but certainly in the United States, yeah. So what I just try to do, and by the way, because I understand DNA and luck pretty well, I know it's really hard to be the number 1, the best of all time. In fact, people, when they argue about the best movies or this or that of all time, I always think it's funny because, there could be 500 just outright amazing movies of all time. Movies have been around, 100, 120 years at most. And we're arguing over, which one's the best. There's probably 500 amazing ones. And it just becomes a matter of taste after that. So are you good at it? How do you know if you're good at it? Well, as an athlete, try to get in the top 5%. That's pretty simple. As an author, sell 10,000 books. Find what that is. And whatever your field is, find out what it takes to be, in there. If you're in there, you, by definition, are good. So that's one way to do it. Another, now, if you're like a teacher or something else, you'll know you're good because of the way the students respond. Well, I knew when I had great lectures, my students were there 100%. I remember a couple of years ago experimenting with a few things, and it was terrible. So I know when I'm good and I know when I'm bad. And the third thing Father Himes reminds us is, does anyone want you to do it? And he has a very funny story about, I'm sure it's true in every field, but sometimes people want to do a job, but we don't want them to do it. And I'm in the book, I have a story that was a little bit harsh. It turns out to be a nice story in the end, but I worked with a teacher who was just, She wanted to be a teacher so badly, but she was terrible. She was terrible at it. When she left teaching and moved into an interesting, a supportive administrative role, she was fabulous. She wasn't put on this earth to teach 25 to 35 adolescents at once, but she was very good coordinating the people who taught those adolescents. She was great at working with teachers. So sometimes you're only you're just down the hall from your ideal career. Do people want you to do it? I'm sure there's a lot of people who want to do certain jobs. If you get a chance to read Parkinson's Law, there's a great thing on getting hired, where they talk about, by definition, anybody who applied for the job isn't worthy to have the job. I always found that to be hilarious in some ways. If you want to do, like, I can always remember when we were trying to hire head coaches, one of the things that always turned me off is when someone wanted to be a head coach. I used to think to myself, there's something wrong with this person. It's very time intensive. You're always wrong. No matter how right you are, you're wrong. I had an incident. Someone brought up something this last week about something that happened in 2006 or 7. And you can't really respond to it because, I'm supposed to be the adult in the situation. But you're always going to be wrong as a head coach. So anybody who wants that job, they're suspect at some level. Now, of course, if the job pays, $50 million, like some of these new jobs are paying, well, I can understand that, why you'd want that. So there you go, Father Michael Himes. Do you love it? Do you love this thing? Number 2, are you good at it? And then finally, number 3, do we want you to do it? And those are three great questions for the discernment process. And those are 3 questions that I think have great value, and you should spend some time, exploring. So, thank you. I thought those were very, very good questions.